Welcome back. Well, the leader of the opposition gets his seat in the House of Commons, and Trump and Carney talked trade and security in the last couple of hours. Summer, usually a slow time for politics, but things are beginning to ramp up, so we've brought in Alex Marlin, the Jaroslavsky Chair of Political Trust and Leadership at Acadia University, and we're always happy to have you in studio. Welcome.
Thanks for having me back.
Let's start with that call between the Prime Minister and the President. We know it was initiated by the Prime Minister. We don't know what the contents were, other than they talked a little bit of trade, a little bit of security for North America, and a little bit of peace in Ukraine. Is it significant that it was the Prime Minister who reached out?
Well, I think when I look at these things I think, where does the information come from? So who's letting us know that these calls happen? And, you know, I strongly imagine that it's not exactly President Trump who's going around telling everyone, hey, look who I talked to. So, you know, clearly the Prime Minister's office wants Canadians to know that the Prime Minister is active and doing things and is not on some sort of summer vacation.
Right. They said that, you know, the direction from Ottawa was, don't get too worked up about a deadline that comes and goes on trade, and it did that in August. But it has been some time since Canadians were given any indication of how the trade talks are going. Is there a window there for a new government, new Prime Minister like Mr. Carney, who was elected to sort of carry the sword on this one? Is there a window before they really have to give us a sense of what's happening?
So yes and no. I mean, these things go through rhythms. So after an election campaign, normally everybody is exhausted, including members of the media. And so once you start hitting summer, once you hit August, lots of politicians disconnect. Frankly, a lot of Canadians don't want to hear about it. And then the pattern is usually we will hear a lot of things about back to school. And so certainly the first week of September is everything is back to school. But once you hit the second week of September, that's when all the news coverage and all the politicking starts re-emerging.
Okay. We heard Doug Ford of Ontario come out very strong yesterday and take a swipe at President Trump. He's close to the Prime Minister. He likes the Prime Minister. He said as much. Is he perhaps being put in a role as Ottawa's attack dog on this?
To some extent. I mean, he comes across with a lot of credibility and has political chops that the Prime Minister doesn't. But another element to this is really his relationship with Pierre Poilievre, right? Of course, because, you know, his alignment and sort of support of the Prime Minister doesn't work well for Pierre Poilievre, and neither Ontario Premier Doug Ford nor Prime Minister Mark Carney are obviously close with Poilievre. So it's almost like they have a mutual enemy in it.
Right. Let me ask you one more thing about the trade and how it's being dealt with by the federal government, and then I want to move on to Mr. Poilievre. But a lot is being made, quite rightly so perhaps, about Western farmers and the canola tariff, increased tariff by China on that commodity. Again, haven't heard much from Ottawa. Do Western farmers, do Westerners have a right to be upset about this?
Well, I mean, Westerners will always have a reason to be upset with Ottawa, let's be honest. But absolutely, they want to see action on this. But there's a lot of people who are worried and a lot of people are anxious. I think where the political climate is right now is a lot of people are still willing to give Mark Carney the benefit of the doubt. They're still waiting to see what he's able to do. And I think in many ways this fits his brand, right? Slow, calculating, methodical, analyzes things. He doesn't come across as the type of person who's impulsive and just makes quick political decisions. So I think that a lot of Canadians are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. When that ends is not clear.
Well, Mr. Poilievre, no doubt, is certainly going to try to speed that up, because he's already called him weak on the U.S. and the China file. He just won his by-election in rather convincing fashion. That's no surprise to you or anyone else. He had a tone that seemed to work when taking on then Prime Minister Trudeau in the House of Commons. Does that change when he comes back to the House of Commons?
Well, yeah, well, we'll have to see for sure. He's obviously very aware of that. I'm a big fan of the expression that if you campaign and advocate for and really put yourself forward for the job of leader of the opposition, that's the job you're going to get. And so we saw that really with, you know, Tom Mulcair as leader of the opposition with the NDP back against Stephen Harper, that in the end what happens is people don't see you as prime ministerial. And so if Pierre Poilievre is serious about wanting to be somebody that people can look at as a prime minister, he has to adjust and change with the political winds. And the way he behaved up until the end of Justin Trudeau's time was acceptable to a reasonable number of Canadians, enough that it looked like he might become Prime Minister. But since the advent of Donald Trump and all his threats about Canada and the ascendancy of Mark Carney, I think what people are looking for now is, frankly, a lot more maturity, a lot more gray hairs, somebody who is not going to be so negative all the time. And we've already seen from Mr. Poilievre, he's made comments about willing to work with anybody. That's not something that we're used to hearing.
Do you think you'll see a leadership review within his party? And how do you think that might shake down? We're way out from that, but it's being batted around.
Right. So in the new year, what we'll see is Conservatives get together and decide whether or not there should be a leadership review process. I think something to think about here is there's no clear individual who's really mobilizing and pushing and angling to get Poilievre out, the way that Poilievre was behind getting Erin O'Toole, the previous leader, pushed out the door. So the reality is, though, that the Conservative MPs also have the ability to trigger a provision of something called the Reform Act, and at any time they could potentially get rid of Pierre Poilievre as well. So for Poilievre, he's got to be constantly worried about the fact that he needs to make sure that he's giving sort of red meat to the Conservative base, while at the same time attracting enough Liberals and maybe NDP supporters and Bloc Québécois who in public opinion polls show that they're a little hesitant, or sometimes quite a bit hesitant, about Poilievre being prime ministerial material.
All right, well, it's a lot to watch for, a lot to think about heading into September. Alex Marlin, thank you for coming in, as always.
All right, my pleasure.
Appreciate your input. We'll take a time out. Lots of your local news on the other side. Stay with us.